song you fear to sing. All is welcome here. And even if you broke your vow 1,000 times, come anyhow. We're stepping into the power of now. All is welcome here. See the Father and the Son reunited, here they come, dancing to the sacred drum. They know they're welcome here. See the shaman and the mighty priest, see the beauty and the beast, singing I have been released, and all is welcome here. Standing alone at the gateless gate, too drunk on love to hesitate. And to the winds I cast my fate, and remnants of my fear. I took a deep breath and I leapt, and I awoke as if I'd never slept. Tears of gratitude I wept, I was welcome here. Bring your laughter, bring your tears, your busy lives and your careers, and bring the pain you carried for years. All is welcome here. And freedom is not so far away. There's only one price we have to pay. Live our dreams till they fade away, and let them go. Waking up, let him go. Yeah, la, 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 la. All is welcome here. La, 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 la. All is welcome here. La, 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 la. Let him go. Let him go. La, 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 la. Oh, there's welcome here. La, 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 la. All is welcome here. All is welcome here. All is welcome here.
appointment. And I'm just really so excited. See how excited I was? It just came on. To have you with us tonight. And I would like to introduce Avenel. She is one of our chaplains, and she's going to lead us in our opening prayer.
It is my honor to greet you tonight. Join me with me to close your eyes if you're comfortable in doing that. Divine Spirit, called by many names, but we know you. As we breathe together, and we sit in this silence, we know that we are connected. And we are so grateful for this knowing. We thank you for George and his life, and Diane, his wife. Their path is beautiful, and we have all come to hear his way of being. Thank you, God. Amen.
The chaplains have the healing circle next door right after this service, or this program. So after we have this wonderful conversation with George, you can just go on over there and get even more energized. And please, you know those cell phones that you carry, please silence them, as half the room goes for them. Thank you. It's just so much nicer when we don't get Tweedledee going. Or Tweedledum. Next week, we have one of our sound immersion soul spas, and that's a name Paula came up with. 7 chakra meditations for summer solstice, and Stephen and Chris Sullivan, and Stephen plays in the on Sundays for us. He plays the guitar. He and his wife are going to give us the power of light of the divine in a meditation on the 7 chakras. They will weave musical tones with gently guided meditation to facilitate an opening to the giving and receiving of the 7 chakra energies. It's going to be a really unique and special evening. So we expect to see you all here with bells on. Yeah, the bells might interrupt the meditation. They might add to it too, right? Anyway, again, it's of course the salad is at 6 and the program is at 7. And then JG, I believe you have a little bit to say about.
Hello, SLC family. That sounds really nice. You know, whenever I move a fan, I suddenly become Southern Belle. But I want to talk about something that's really fantastic. How many of you have attended a Karen Drucker concert? Ooh, good. Because, you know, you've got up until Sunday. For those of you who have not done this, well, you've had 5 weeks, but you have up till Sunday to get the early bird, and this is a chance to be with your family and have a fantastic time where we're going to have a whole lot of bling out in the audience. Notice I got my bling. And so it's on the 2-2. I want you to remember some numbers. I want you to remember that it's only 2-5 for a 6 on a 2-2. And I don't mean wearing a 2-2. So I'll break that down. It's on a 2-5 for a 6 on a 2-2. That's $25 on the early bird, on the 6th month, on the 22nd day. You can figure out the rest. Now, I'm wondering, are there any fans out there of Karen Drucker? Get up there and tell me you're a fan.
I'm a fan.
Oh, good.
I'm a real fan. I'm a big fan of Karen Drucker. And I'm a fan. I have my ticket.
So, I leave you with, are you a fan?
Thank you, JG. Some of you look like you have actually worked with fans in the past. Oh, all right then.
I can. Here it is.
So our Talk the Walk series is an interview that we do with different people, mostly in the congregation. And I really like when we came up with this because it's like so much you want to, walk your talk. Well, let's talk what our walk has been about. And I've invited our next guest because I think he has, it may not be a unique story, except his experience is unique to him. And most of us know him from how he is here at SLC. He is on the board of trustees. He is our treasurer. He is the chair of the facilities committee, chair of the finance committee. And I'm not quite sure what he does in his, they have house concerts at home, and I have no idea what he does in his spare time. We might find out tonight. But I'm really excited to bring to our Talk the Walk platform, George Piper.
Okay.
Good evening, George.
Good evening.
Oh, your microphone's on. See how special you are?
Yes. I made sure it was going to work.
Oh, well, okay. So we don't do a lot of really canned questions here. This is pretty much we get started and let Spirit take the lead. But the first thing I always want to know about someone, George, did you grow up the way you grew up? Did you grow up in any kind of spirituality or any kind of religion?
No. That
None?
was easy. What's the next one?
Okay, so could we add more syllables to?
Yeah. Well, let me first start out with something. A kind of a disclaimer in a way, maybe. I'm going to first start out telling all of you everything I know. Okay? Won't take long. So here we go. Okay, did you get that? Yeah. Any questions? What you'll hear from me tonight is about my experiences and my beliefs, because I know nothing. Okay, now you can go.
Okay. Well, thank you, because I think a lot of us feel like we're in good company then. But so you didn't grow up with any kind of spirituality, but you obviously, your life started out on a fairly good track, right? I mean, you couldn't have.
Well, yeah.
I mean, what would you say is, how did you start out? And let's just go from there, and then we can talk about what went kind of screwy, and then how it got better again.
There was basically no spirituality in the family. We were Episcopalians. We were all baptized. I was asked to leave the Episcopalian Church at a very early age. I believe I was in the 3rd or 4th grade. And actually, what I said, I blame on my older brother, because I don't think I would have known to say it at that time. So they broke down into classes for the kids. So I'm in class one day, and a question was asked, and she was asking it of me. I don't remember what the question was, but my answer was, I just think this thing is a big fairy tale. That didn't go over real well. They went to my parents and said, he can come to church, but he can't come to class. So I don't know if I was just manipulative enough to figure out a way to not have to go to church, or if I really thought that. Anyway, so I don't think I ever heard God mentioned in our family.
Well, I grew up in the Episcopal Church, and the thing that I knew is that you went to church on Sunday and you talked to God and you got that thing, but you never, ever talked about God out loud.
Yeah, well, we didn't even go to church on Sunday except if it was Christmas or Easter,
right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
There was nothing spiritual at all. Well, I guess because we're human, maybe there was something spiritual there, but I didn't see it at that time.
Okay, so did you think of yourself, did you even think of yourself as an atheist? I mean, did you even think about spirituality at all? Did you consider yourself an atheist or agnostic, or were you just
Up
like
until
humming along and not really paying attention to it?
No, up until the age of 43, when some drastic things happened, I was a professed atheist. Now, I don't really know if I was, but I said I was. Because of events that took place, I very rapidly, well, not so rapidly, was it, Diane? It took me about 14 years.
That's fast for some people.
To really get into the real spiritual stuff. So I don't know. I mean, we don't have long enough here for me to tell the whole story. But everything was fine, I thought, in my life. High school was great. I had a lot of friends and do a lot of activities. And as far as I was concerned, everything was great. And got to college and everything was great. Diana and I went to college together. Everything seemed fine. When I got out of college, the high-stress business that I was in, and it was a business that actually I came to really dislike.
And what was that business?
Well, it's hard to explain. I was in real estate, but you didn't come to me and have me sell you a property. We established partnerships and managed those partnerships and the properties. And in a sense, I felt like because of what the properties we would look at and maybe purchase, we were taking advantage of somebody that fell on bad times. And after a few years of that didn't set well with me. I didn't want to be doing that.
Okay, so even though you weren't raised with an active spirituality, you obviously had compassion and you had a heart and you had a conscience.
I did. In fact, I can tell a little story about that. You can go way back into elementary school. And I went to a very small elementary school, country school. My father was a rancher. And many of my classmates, their parents actually worked for my father. It was kind of a ritual. Every afternoon after class, there was this little country store about a block away from the school. And we would go there, and all of us that had a little money in our pocket would get a Coke and a candy bar. But some of those kids weren't able to do that. And some of them their parents worked on my father's ranch. I was fortunate enough because, I always had money in my pocket because I worked on the ranch. Now, I didn't have to, but, it was my choice. But I always had and I would go to these kids that I knew could not afford to get a candy bar and a Coke. Some would decline, and most of the time, if they did decline, I went in and bought one anyway and brought it back out to them. So I started at that really young age of realizing that, and my father instilled this in me too, that just because we are the owners of the ranch, we're no different, and we're no better than those people that are working on the ranch. So that was probably when I first noticed that, hey, maybe I'm an okay guy.
And I just think it's important to make that point that even though there wasn't that basis of spirituality teaching you that God's going to get you or whatever, is that inherently you are a good person, because your life at some point took a fairly major turn. And you spiraled down before you spiraled into light. And I'm not sure how you want to get to that.
Well, yeah, as I said, I thought everything was great, but I was really conflicted. I didn't want to do what I was doing, and so the way I got out of it was through self-destruction. And I self-destroyed myself by becoming addicted to cocaine. It was I cannot really say how it all happened because I don't remember for sure the actual. I know where it happened and who with, and believe me, it wasn't from the hood. I was introduced to that drug in probably the wealthiest neighborhood in Sacramento. And I was so naive at that time. I mean, you're looking at a person that in college, I might have had a 6-pack of beer in a semester. And I just didn't do any of that stuff. So I was trying to avoid it. I was going to these parties, and at these parties, there were bowls about this size, full of cocaine. I never participated for quite some time because I was training to run a marathon. I cannot tell you specifically when I did, but I did, and became addicted. And it took me about 14 years to completely get clean and sober. 3 rehabs, and it's hard to explain. There might be some of you that are very familiar with addictions out there, but especially that particular drug, you don't want to do it. And you swear you're never going to do it again, but you do it because it's so powerful. It has you. So yeah, it took me a long time to get squared away. And
May I ask a question? Take a breath. So how old were you when this started?
43.
So you got through life until you're 43, and then something snapped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really snapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because see, I never drank. I mean, once in a while, I never did any drugs ever. But when it happened, it happened. And I just have to say, if it weren't for that lady sitting right there, Diane, I would probably be dead. Not probably, I would have been dead or institutionalized, one of the two. She's really the one that got me into the spirituality part because she found the 12-step program before I ever did because I didn't want to find anything at that time.
And I think we point out that it's not that you didn't want to find it because you were resistant. It's just you couldn't think clearly. You were so...
No, I couldn't.
You were just...
I could not think clearly at all. In fact, just to show you how unclear I was thinking, one day I all of a sudden discovered that there was a property that was going into foreclosure. I had no idea it was happening. I was totally gone. I was what I guess I would say is totally spiritually bankrupt. During many of those years until the end, obviously I wasn't willing to do what I needed to do in order to straighten out. Probably 2 of the most important words in my life, or well, 3. Truth, acceptance, willingness. And acceptance is the most important word in my life because until I was able to accept who I was and what I was doing, nothing happened. And it was in about the 13th year, I believe, that happened. And I had read this particular article by a Dr. Paul O. that starts out by saying, and acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. I had read that and reread it and read it and reread it. I rejected it because it said all. You see, I was looking for an excuse to reject it because I didn't think anything could be that all-inclusive. Well, one day I just happened to pick up and read that again, and all of a sudden the light went on. Yes, that is exactly what it is. It is the answer to all of my problems today. I really do believe that. Because once that acceptance set in, that's when the turn came from spiraling down to start spiraling back up.
Well, had you been being exposed to the spirituality that Diane had found over that 14 years, was that unity or was that something else?
No, that was
she just kind of keep put in front of your face and.
Yeah, no, Diane didn't.
That work?
Diane, no, she didn't do that. She actually, I'll tell you what she did that she thought was going to be the cure-all, but it didn't work. On May 1st of 1988, I got divorce papers. And probably many of you don't know, we are divorced. It's working so well, we don't think we need to change it. We've talked about it, but I mean, after all, it's working beautifully. We were divorced, but I don't know. We never can figure just how long we were separated, not very long. Counselors kept telling us, you guys need to separate for at least 6 months and get yourselves together individually before you come together and get squared away together. We couldn't do it. We couldn't stay apart for 6 months.
That's an interesting blessing to have, isn't it?
Yeah. So, okay, where was I? Where were we?
Okay, so I had asked the kind of spirituality that Diane was bringing to you. Was she, was she like shoving it at you, or was she just,
No.
she obviously was doing something, but.
She was. Actually, kind of how it happened. She was going to Al-Anon. She found Al-Anon. And so she was learning how to deal with the person that I was at that time. So no, nothing was pushed, but there were little hints here and there. But then I went actually into AA program because at that time there was not much available in terms of meetings for other drugs except marijuana. So, but had she not done that, I probably would have never found, because she did in very subtle ways let me know about the program. And at some point, I finally, I guess, decided that maybe I need to see what this is all about. So I did, but I was not your model. I was not your model AA person or drug addict person going to meetings. I went to meetings, I was not really into the meetings, but I would go and I would pick up some things. But what actually ended up happening was that, and I don't go to meetings today because this is my meeting. The church has become my meeting. But in 2001, am I jumping ahead because there's a lot of stuff that I could say?
It's okay, George.
Prior to that. 2001, I had been down in San Jose working, and Diane was still up here because she worked for the state, and she wasn't going to leave the state job just to come down and be with me. I mean, come on. But she was there every weekend, pretty much. And when I came back to Sacramento, and that was 2001, she would go off each Sunday to SLC. I didn't know anything about SLC. I didn't know I had never heard of Unity. I knew nothing. And as I said earlier on, I still know nothing. But what I do know is that SLC was a major factor in me turning around and staying turned around. She used to leave little things around the house, you know, and she knew that I'd probably pick them up and read them, and I did. And so one Sunday, she's getting ready to go to church. And I typically would get up and just, you know, do whatever, roam around, have some coffee, whatever. Except this morning, I was getting into the shower. And so she says, "Where are you going?" I says, "Well, to church with you, if it's okay." And so I did. And that was my first time at SLC. It was at Pioneer. And she didn't want me to tell this part of it, but I'm going to. Because I think it has to be part of the story. When we left that morning, walking down those stairs at Pioneer, I turned to her and I said, "Diane, these people are all whacked."
To which we would say thank you.
Yeah. I'm telling you, they're totally whacked. What is this that they all think they're God? Because they had just sung the song, you know, what is it that, "Be still, we are all God." I interpreted that as meaning that they all thought that they were God. Now, see, I had no introduction to unity until that day, and to SLC. So I had no idea what it was all about. I just kind of felt that maybe I needed to find out what it was all about. So she said, "Well, you'll understand if you just keep coming, and you'll start to understand what it's all about." Well, I did. I kept on going, and I finally. I'm kind of a slow learner, so it took me a while to figure it all out. But that's how I got started with SLC.
So were you still using at that point, or had
No,
you?
no.
Okay, so you had stopped at some point, and then we're trying to figure out.
Actually, probably my date is 1999, because even once I gave up cocaine, I was able to give up cocaine, then, you know, what typically happens is you might fill in with another drug. And I filled in with alcohol. So it was not until 1999 that I got through that. And that was a rehab that I stayed in for 5 months.
Okay, so did you manage to hold a job throughout this period? That
Pretty much, yeah. I
pretty much.
Yeah, I was usually doing something.
Okay.
Actually, you know, I did. You know, this is an interesting point. I did not realize that what I was doing was on a self-destruction course. The only way that I finally found that out was through a psychiatrist that I was going to, and he pointed out that, you know, you were self-destroying. You probably consciously didn't know that, but subconsciously you did. And because that's what you wanted to happen. And I kind of looked at him, and I almost got up and walked out. But he was absolutely right. That's what I was doing. To get out of what I didn't like, first the drug came, because that, you know, that helped me be okay. Helped me be happy for a while. That goes away fast. So once I realized that that's what was going on, actually he said to me, "Had you not done what you did, I would have been more concerned," which was kind of a mind-blowing statement to me.
Well, but it seems to me like you got to a point in your life where you were going against your the person who you really were.
Yeah.
And the pressure of going against who you really are is so much that people look for an escape from that.
Right.
Because you don't know how to get out of what you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And then it compounds until here you are. And then, okay, so then you figure out that you're being self-destructive, you're coming to SLC. Did this just start to sort of break apart in pieces? And I mean, obviously you had a wall around you. Obviously you were.
Yeah. It was in pieces, but once I wasn't using, but I was still a little bit of a mess when I first started at SLC, because I was just not happy with. At that time, I had already done a transformation from all of that stuff that I didn't want to do into landscape design and installation, which was the gardening kind of thing and everything was kind of a hobby with me. And I decided, well, maybe that's what I ought to do. And so I did. I didn't expect it to be anywhere near as successful as it was, but it became a passion. And really, I think that was one of the pieces. I realized the connection to nature. And I still, that's my connection to God, is through nature. And I have a kind of a nice backyard where I spend some time in. And that's my kind of sanctuary, and that's where I go. I don't sit down and meditate specifically, but I kind of do a walking meditation pretty much every day in my backyard, because it's basically nature back there for me, and it's my connection to God. So I guess, I'm going to back up again, because we started SLC, or she started in 1999. I started in 2001. And then in 2007, I believe it was, when Larry and Denise, who were ministers here for a while, when they decided to go over to Davis and start something there, we decided to follow them because we really liked what both of them had to say, and liked their talk was genuine. And so we went over there, and we were over there for what, 7 years? 7 years. And I was treasurer over there, and was prayer chaplain over there, or I don't know what else I did. I did a lot over there, I guess. The board. So here's what I've also discovered. Diane did a lot, but I don't know that she did as much as this, and that's service. Being of service, I found, was the most powerful way, at least for me, to get into the real transformation that I needed to have happen. Because I was still kind of wondering about, what is this whole thing about? And back to the acceptance part, basically what SLC says is, what is. That's basically acceptance. So I guess I just couldn't help myself. Service and more service and more service and more service. And actually when we decided to come back over here, we came over here one Sunday because the energy at Davis was just really, Larry and Denise had left, and the energy was just really what we wanted to participate in. So we came over here one Sunday, and LeJean and Anne did a duet. That did it. That did it. And we said, okay, the energy and everything that was here, I said, we've got to come back. So that's when we came back. Now, I had people all along the way throughout those years that we were over at Davis always, hey, come on, you guys really need to come back to SLC. You need to come back to SLC. And so we finally did, but what I said to Diane and said to some people that were here when we first came back, because they were nudging me to do some things, specifically there was an opening or two on the board. And I said, no, I'm just going to think I'm going to be a congregant for a while, just a congregant. Well, that didn't last long.
There's some of us who just can't help ourselves.
Yeah, I guess. Well, I really enjoyed it over in Davis, but I never, and I still don't look at myself as a leader, but I do contribute in a way that I think does help the community here. And if I'm helping this community, that means that it's going out into the universe and helping the universe. And if I can only make a difference for one person, I've done what I've needed to do.
Well, thank you for sharing this part of the story, because those of us who know you, it's very hard to imagine you not being you and not just being your real self. But it sounds like you spent a lot of years trying to figure out that it was okay to be yourself, or the fact that you had gone against your inner nature to do this other kind of job, got yourself in trouble by doing that, and then the way you've worked yourself out, because we do call it, we call this spiraling into life.
Yeah.
And I get, whenever I think about spirals and this kind of work, those spiral copper thingies that have the ball in them?
Yeah.
And the ball really doesn't move, but it seems to.
Yeah.
I always think about that when we talk about this sort of thing, because those things are sort of miraculous in a way, and it's an illusion,
Yeah.
and it's really there.
Yep.
And so...
there is one thing that played into all this too, besides just the fact that part of the reason that I didn't like what I was doing was not just because of what I was doing, but it was about money. It was about money. And that's what I learned from my father. He would give you the shirt off of his back, but it was really all about money. And I pretty much rejected that. So what did I do? But get into money. So, I didn't want to be there, and I knew I didn't want to be there. Oh gosh, when I think back, some of the stuff I was doing, I running around in very expensive cars, very expensive clothes, all of that stuff, all of the outer stuff. And guess what? It did nothing. I was still a mess. So when I finally found the 12-step program and Spiritual Life Center, that's when I was finally able to go within. And I truly believe that for me, and I think, I will say this, I said I didn't know anything, and I don't really know this about you, but I really think that most of us, that's the biggest struggle for us, is to go within, to get away from the ego. For me, that was certainly the case. And I will also say, I think a lot of times we set up blocks that don't allow us to change, don't allow us to transform, and don't allow us to get out of what we are doing that we don't want to do. And so that dynamic that was in the family was all part of it. And in fact, it's probably the most important part of it.
Right. Well, we live in a culture that
Yeah.
makes it not okay for us to be ourselves. We talk about this in every which way around here. It's like, how do you come to know who you are, who you really are, and then really come out into the world and be that? And we live in a culture where that's not really okay. And so there's this dissonance almost all the time. If that dissonance weren't there, we probably wouldn't be here, because we wouldn't have to be.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's very confusing. It's very, very confusing. So you spent
Even more
like,
so when you're on drugs.
So in your 20s and 30s, you're out making the money and doing the big thing, and then it just became too much and
Just collapsed.
changed, and it just completely changed your, trajectory.
Which was a good thing. I mean, really, and some people, think that I'm probably really crazy when I say this, but it's absolutely true. I needed to go through all of that in order to be where I am here today, because I was a professed atheist. I didn't want to hear anything about God. Please don't talk to me about God. In fact, the first rehab that I went in to, I walked in and God all over the walls. I walked back out. That was before the time of cell phones. I walked back out and called everybody in my family and said, I'm out of here. Well, fortunately, I didn't leave. I stuck around and really learned what they meant by God. It was, it was a struggle,
An adventure.
an adventure.
So are you okay if we open this up to questions?
Yeah, let me just say that where I am today, and I have to give Larry and Denise partial credit for this, because what we're doing here today and going into the mission-centric ministry and the Q effect, Diane and I were introduced to that kind of thinking and those concepts quite a few years ago, actually, because through nonviolent communication, which is a lot of the same stuff, except that the Q effect takes it further and deeper. That today, I try to live every day as though no one and nothing is against me, and that whatever you say about me is none of my business.
Okay, if you have a question, please raise your hand and wait for the microphone. Anybody have any questions of George? George has answered every question you could possibly ever have. Really? Keep talking, George. Oh,
Uh-oh.
all right.
This guy's just a heckler now. He's just...
Well, okay, at this point, we could use a heckler.
Well, first of all, the delivery of the truth that you had to experience to go from a level of cloud, a level of confusion, a level of distrust, disconnect, and then all of a sudden this awareness piece was presented to you, and you finally acknowledged its presence inside of you. But you had this sort of experience when you were talking about your childhood thing with the sodas and with the next person and regarding them and everything else like that. So then you took it from a caring level to a deeper internal spiritual level. But then you mentioned about the service piece, and the issue is that in assisting and helping others, it really has been an issue of reaffirming what it was that was evolving for you. Mm-hmm. And so it's very, very interesting that our church every Sunday sort of brings all of these same points in reference. I mean, here you have a specific story to affirm, again, what's being said every Sunday. But it's very, very nice for us to hear individual experiences, because they really do sort of illustrate why we are here in the first place. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to thank you for this.
You're welcome. Mm-hmm.
So, you as a board member, do you see Spiritual Life Center hosting a 12-step or Al-Anon meeting here during the day? That's when I think, at least I have been told, that it would fit at that time.
Yes, I could see that happening. Yeah, now, I can't say that it will, because I'm only one of the board. But if a 12-step program came to us and said, we're looking for meeting place, I'm sure that something would happen. I mean, after all, if you think about it, I think all of you are very well aware that my story and James's story is very similar.
And my story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm curious, so what are you excited about for SLC as a board member? What are one or two things you're excited about for this community in the coming 6 to 9 months or the coming year?
Well, I'm really tuned into the mission-centric ministry, and I can't tell you what's going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months. But what I'm already seeing happening is there is on the board, on the committees that I'm involved with, there has been a definite change in consciousness. And I will just put it out there. There was a definite consciousness of lack, and I'm seeing that fade away. In fact, almost disappearing in some cases. And that needed to happen for us to move forward. I see it also in the community, and just talking out, because I like to be out there in the courtyard after church and just talking to people and listening to people. It's a whole different conversation today than 3 years ago when I first came onto the board. And to me, that's the real progress. That's the real progress. What's going to happen in the next 6 to 9 months? I think more of that.
Because I would say that we've got a momentum building now.
We do. We definitely do. And at least I see it. And as a board member, and especially as the treasurer. Well, you're cutting me off. I can't talk about the treasurer. Yeah, as treasurer, I used to get a lot of questions about the finances. I don't get many today because I think everybody knows now that we have a handle on it and that we are very, very, very transparent. That anything that anybody wants to see regarding the finances or talk about, we do that. You can come to me, you can come to Elaine, but please don't bother Randy Sizemore, our accountant.
No, he means it.
Yeah, Randy doesn't like to be bothered. He's so busy putting the financials together that, it's a real task to what he does every month. And he's a volunteer. So we don't want to press him too hard. We don't want him to burn out.
Thank you, George, for sharing your story. I've heard parts of it before, but it was very interesting the way you put it together. But I also felt the way you did when I first came to SLC. I told Rick, that's not even a church. And I grew to like it. And the people, I thought these people are huggy people.
Oh,
I did
yes.
not know why they did that.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
And the next thing I know, I'm hugging everybody too. So anyway, thank you for sharing.
That was me too. That first day when people stood up and everybody started hugging, I looked at Diane and I said, I don't think so. But now, beware, because I'll probably hug you.
Do we have time for one more question, maybe two?
Are you guys ever going to get married?
You don't have the microphone. You can't ask a question. Lynn?
Really? Go ahead. You said something about the conversation has changed. I would like to know how you would describe the conversation before and after, the contrast between the two.
Mm-hmm. Well, the before was you heard a lot of stuff about finances and the fact that we were spending beyond our means and that we were I'll remember one that I overheard, and it was basically that this is not going to last much longer. We're done. Well, I really had to control myself to just stay out of that conversation. But today, people out there, they're happier. They're talking about maybe what they're going to be doing the rest of the weekend, or they're talking about some event that's coming up for the church. They're there's a, gosh, what would the word be? There's a, to me, there's a genuine belief now that we're on the right track.
Something you said earlier about how your father was all about money. I was thinking he managed money very well.
He did.
And I want to acknowledge you because you got programmed to manage money very well. And I think that people were authentically scared because we were in the red a lot, or
Yeah.
at least that was the rumor that was going around. I wasn't on the inside of that story, so I'm only addressing it as a rumor because that was my knowledge of it. But to have you stand up and for Elaine to explain, you know, about how we're not going in the red every time we borrow from our building
Yeah,
fund.
right.
And she goes to great length to do it, and she does it very accurately, and she'll take the time to do it where we'll understand what she's talking about. And that's transparency. And when we have transparency, we don't have to be afraid anymore.
That's right.
And I
That's right.
acknowledge you and the board and the direction that we're going with that. And I think that's part of the Q process.
It is,
With the
absolutely.
shadow self, confronting the shadow self, and number one was not enough. And you're saying it's disappearing, and I feel that too.
And I can also tell you from the staff perspective, we are not trying to have fundraiser after fundraiser after fundraiser after fundraiser. I mean, everyone was exhausted, and you would have felt that, right? Because it's like we have to have another fundraiser and another one and another one, and you're going to be finding in the Sunday service, I think we're going to be making 3 announcements on Sundays instead of 6 or 7.
Yeah.
So you know how we start service about 20 after because of all of those announcements? It's going away. Yes.
Yeah.
So that we can come in here and we can do church. We can, you know, do our spirituality. And we're almost out of time, George, so.
You know, one thing that has happened too, that we don't talk about money. We try not to talk about money any more than we have to. I'm also on JG's prosperity team, and we talk about the events, because talking about the money doesn't get people to come to the event. That's pretty much a no-brainer, but you know, we weren't doing that. We were talking about the money and how are we going to get enough money to, you know, get through the month, or how are we going to do this? And of course, I kept saying, don't talk about the money. Talk about the event. Talk that up, because then the money is going to follow.
Okay.
Okay.
George, thank you for coming
You're
and
welcome.
sharing your personal story.
You're welcome.
I know that many people knew much about George's story, but to come up here and sit and talk about it like that takes a lot of courage, and I really, really admire you for coming up here and doing this. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I will say one thing. I know in the kind of story that I just told, there are people that won't ask questions because they're in a group. If you have any question that you want to ask me, I'm very willing to, I'll give you some kind of answer.
Thank you, George. And we were just talking about finances. There's no good segue here, folks. But we do know that the sharing that we do with our love offering is it keeps the programs going, and it also is. Can we wait until we do the? Oh, thank you. It keeps our programs going, and also the giving and the receiving is what keeps everything in circulation, and circulation is what keeps us all alive on every level. So let us take our love offering and do our blessing. Divine love, as me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I circulate. Thank you, God.
Thank you. 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 Pouring down, your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Your love is pouring down. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And we bless this offering knowing that it is used for the highest and best good, and that our good comes and our good flows out, and we are blessed. And so it is. Amen. I just love it that you guys have all started singing along with that. I love that song. Let's stand, get as connected as possible, and do our prayer for protection. Bless those guys.